Alrighty, we're under, what is this, 403?
405 Broadway.
405 Broadway.
405 Broadway.
1870s, early 70s.
1871 is what the Bob got signed to.
1871, and we have scraped up a few 1870s bottles. Kind of close to the surface near what looks like a privy in the back, underneath the building.
Taking movies?
Yep. I've never dug a privy under a commercial building before, so this will be a first if that's what it is. And it certainly looks like that's what it is back in the back. But I'll have to travel back to the back to show you what's back in the back, Jack. Well, alrighty. This is the second visit I've made to 405 Broadway. And we got a smattering of bottles. It looks like they cleaned out the privy, if I didn't mention that in my previous recording, and just kind of threw it about because it was actually in the basement of the building. So everything was kind of all over the map. The best one out today would have been this one, except of course I had to dig it from the top down in perfect condition. And what the heck does it say? It's got a fancy monogram on the front of it. And then on the side it says Bordeaux, French for I don't know. And then Alexis G-O-D-I-L-L-O-T, Godier, and then I-E-U-N-E, probably for genuine or some damn thing. It was a big one, nice early applied string lip. Yeah, it's probably ponnelled. Eesh. Anyway, didn't dig up anything really super great at all, but it was fun. And the privy is still there, it's just wet. It's a wet hole. As I was saying, it's a wet hole, so I'll have to wait till August or September maybe when the water table lowers down. Anyway, there were a smattering of 1860s, early 70s bottles. Much of it was turn of the century. Down in the privy I'm about 3 foot, and it was turning 1880s, 1890s down there at that level. So I'm thinking that's about when they cleaned it out. Probably late 80s. Anyway, I'll take late 80s in the hole any day, if that's what's at the bottom. Sure. Yep, whatever the bottle gods feed me. Now these bottles are the ones that I saved from another dig that you just watched the video to. But anyway, the building was supposedly built in 1871, yet that J.B. Brown pharmacy bottle is clearly 1860s. This thing is crude, old. I think I featured it in another video where I dug an exact one where I had busted the bottom edge of, so I think I used this as a an example, basically. This is the one that I dug up whole underneath the building that my friends own. Interestingly enough about this dig, I'd never heard of or was not aware of commercial buildings having privies in the basement. I thought it was rather odd since they had room behind the building to have a privy. Matter of fact, there's a building right next door to it that belonged to the Orinsky Drug Company that was strictly 1870s. And on the early 1880s Sanborn map shows clearly a privy in the back of the property, which isn't very big. It's like a courtyard right next door to where this building is. And, you know, like I say, there was plenty of room back there for an outdoor privy, but I guess they decided they wanted to be more discreet. I don't know. But it was really nasty because it was clear that the privy was upstairs and it just kind of was gravitationally guided, shall we say? Gravitationally guided. And they just had this big pit down below, about 10 feet down, and it seemed to have just sort of splattered everywhere. They actually built sort of a wooden barrier so it wouldn't splatter everywhere, apparently. Sorry to be gross about it, but that's what they did. So anyway, dug up this cool Kleindienst Hannibal Soda transitional. I think what happened was that the earlier ones that had Kleindienst straight across with the T and the D on the back side of the mold ran into problems when they needed to replace part of the mold or whatever, lining them up with a new mold or something with the back half. I don't know. It's the only thing I can think of why they would arch it. Otherwise, why change it, you know? But it didn't last very long because, like I say, David died by 1874. And you can pretty well date these to like the mid-1870s. I think they probably used up whatever was left on order, and then they reordered the later style. But anyway, always a cool bottle. I've only dug up 2 of them like this, where I've dug up literally dozens of the others. The New York Pharmacal Association bottle is just hammered, whittled. You know, if this had been a round bottle, you know, it would have been spectacular. But it's pretty cool as it is. I don't know if you can call that a hinge mold or what, but it's definitely early. The top is applied. I can easily feel the ridge in there, and just perfect. Oh, it came out almost sparkly clean. One of my favorite window bottles. And then this funky little cone ink that really wanted to be an umbrella ink with the petals. I've never dug up another one with. Now that one's got a half circle hinge mold on it, so, and a real funky applied top. So yeah, what's not to like about that? And then this little guy is made out of carved out of bone. I mean, you can see, well, maybe you can't, but it's got some porousness to it, where it's definitely bone material. And for what purpose, I have no idea. You know, I don't think it's a game piece. It's hollow all the way through, hollowed out for whatever reason. And just a fancy little carved thingamajig. Anybody has any ideas, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Anyway, that was really a fun dig, and there's still a little bit left in the bottom of it. I may have to go back and revisit that one. a lot of these, like the blue bottle, was found outside of the hole. Most of the older stuff was outside of the pit. I think matter of fact, I think all of these were outside of the pit. Everything in the pit was 1890s. Getting back into the 80s towards the bottom. That's why I think it was dipped, and they just, rather than trying to haul it out of there, they just slopped it around. Again, they were kind of gross about it. Maybe because it was a grocery store. Oh, I had to throw that in there, you know. Anyway, there you go. Well, okay, somehow I managed to leave out this little guy who's one of my favorite ink bottles. Gillette's Chemical Works, Chicago. And I know Gillette's changed its spelling somewhere along the line. I can't remember when and what, but I know there was a 1T Gillette and a 1L Gillette. Regardless, this thing's got a crude, obviously applied top, and it has the N and the star on the base, indicating a Newark, Ohio glassmaker. We're in business from 1873 to 1904, and from what I was reading, the general consensus is this is the earlier mark, probably somewhere from 1873 through the 70s, maybe into the early 80s, but this thing screams 70s all day long to me. One of my favorite little ink bottles, like a schoolhouse ink, but instead of being a plain Jane like 90% of them are, this one's embossed in almost a greenish color. Not quite, but if you squint real hard, you could almost imagine it being green. Well, I rarely take a time out for a broken crier, but this one's way too cool. It's a strange lugged fruit jar, magic fruit jar, William Culley, Pittsburgh, sole proprietor, and then some patent date it looks like on the other piece there. Enough to take home and glue together. See what it was. Hope there's a whole one. This one looks rare. It just looks rare. I don't know if this is going to be my first undamaged amber fruit jar or not. So far it looks whole and undamaged, but then again, I only have a fraction of it showing. I don't care if it is a lightning jar. Well, I've been in the hole on day 2 now for about 45 minutes, just trying to dig down to the lower use level. And I've dug a couple of plain nothings. Where the heck is that guy? There he is. Anyway, this does not look like a Hannibal soda. I believe this is probably from Quincy. But I might get lucky. Who knows? Well, alrighty, these 2 bottles are the only ones remaining from a a dig back in, about 9 years ago, I guess. It was an interesting hole because mainly of the two jars that I managed to stab with my probe. And they were late throws. It was like, oh, let's finish cleaning out Grandma's fruit jar cellar. And they threw these jars right on the top of the pit. So when I stuck my probe in, of course, naturally, I felt the crunching of glass. And I was trying to actually show off how to find the walls of a privy. So I kept poking around with my probe and violating one of the main rules that I usually stick to. It's don't overprobe the hole once you find it. You know, put that sucker away because you're likely to stab the best bottle, or in this case, the best jar in the hole, which was better than any bottle as well. It was the magic fruit jar from William McCully and Company, number 7, and it's in the, I've got the Red Book number. Shoot, I was supposed to have that with me. Anyway, let me just say it was a good jar. In my old Red Book 9, it was listed at $1,000. And I didn't realize I had stabbed it. I pulled out these pieces and I was like, oh my God, this has got to be rare. So I drug the pieces home, glued them together, had the top half glued together, the bottom half glued together. And when I put the top on the bottom, I was just shaking my head going, why couldn't this be whole? And as I turned the jar slowly around to the back side, I could clearly see there was my probe hole, bigger than day. It did have a sizable chip in the lip, but other than that, I finished off its demise, I'm sad to say. And right next to it was the Haynes Patent 1870 jar. That one listed for $100. And that one looks like it would have been perfect. You know, I just stuck right through it. So there went the 2 best pieces of glass before I even opened it up. And although these 2 guys, I mean, I kept them for a reason. The Ben Fraser and Company Druggist, there we go, Ben Fraser and Company Druggist bottle. This is a tough bird to find. I've only found this one, and it's got a WT Company patent date of 1881. And the only listing I have for this guy is 1885-86 directory. There was no 87 directory, so he could have lasted that long, but by 1888 he was gone. And which is interesting because there were only 2 Frasers. There was a Dr. James Fraser who happened to be married to Laura Hawkins. And if your memory doesn't serve you all that well, I'll refresh it. Laura Hawkins was the presumed model for Tom Sawyer's love affair or love interest, Becky Thatcher. And she married Dr. Fraser when she was 20 and lived out to be 91 years old. Anyway, I believe Ben was probably Laura Hawkins or Becky Thatcher's brother-in-law. So how cool is that? There is a connection to Mark Twain, although roundabout. And then this bad boy came out with it. And, you know, I can't say that they're common, but they're certainly not rare or even scarce for that matter. They probably are. The rare one is the one that spells Hannibal correctly. But everybody wants the one that has Hannibal misspelled, which is kind of cool. And I've seen some of these with like a lightning type stopper. What do you call those? Shoot, I can't remember. Brain damaged. And then also they come, apparently, now I've never dug any with any hutch stoppers stuck in them, but I suppose they could work as a hutch stoppered bottle, but you know, the debate rages on that one. Usually if something came with a hutch stopper, you dig them up with the hutch stopper somewhere nearby or in the bottle or broken at the bottom of the bottle, who knows. But anyway, that was an interesting dig, because there was, on the 1854 map, there was another older, what appeared to be a house there, and I never did dig any parts to anything older than maybe the early 80s. So there you have it. An interesting little dig. Learned me a lesson the hard way. You know, don't overprobe the hole. That's all I can say about it. Alrighty, today is April 9th, Saturday, about noon. And I'm down here on the waterfront. There's the water, kind of, wait a minute, off to the there, yeah. On the other side of the bridge, mostly. And basically, you can't see hardly any water. Oh well, that's the way it goes around here. Behind the old water power plant, circa, I'd guess 1920s. And they're tearing it up back here for a pipeline of some sort, for some reason. Yeah, it goes over the tracks and over down in here, and I found shards down in there yesterday along the rim line here. Hiked all over the damn place. Kept finding older bits and pieces right around in here, so I poked open kind of a soft spot here. Doesn't feel like a privy or look like a privy. But anyway, I started pulling out shards. All kinds of pieces. The best identifiable, well, I got a piece of a Kilmer's here. The great Dr. Kilmer's Swamp Root. But the best ones I've gotten is this so far unidentifiable bitters. The R is not followed by an S, and it's too high up on the panel. Well, maybe it's not, but I'm thinking it is, because here's one right here, 1860s, 1870s, William McCully on the base. Oh man, that would have been a nice one. It was all there with a big brick sitting on top of it. But this one, see, no matter how I put this R anywhere, it really doesn't seem to match up. There would have been another S, apostrophe S after that. I don't know what bitters that is, but the R looks a little bit older than this one. Anyway, all kinds of shards, and it's real shallow digging. So far there's really nothing deep. Here's a shepherd's crook shard of a mason jar. Wow, that just popped up on me. Anyway, not real promising, but boy, if I can dig up one of these early William McCully Hosteters. I don't think I've got a McCully. Maybe I do. Anyway, most of the stuff's 1890, so that these two bitters, for some reason, they hung on to them for a special occasion. It's a special stomach illness. Let's break out the Hosteters. Yeah, we hadn't had that in nigh 30 years now. Since the last time we puked up our toenails. Yeah. Well, only took me a few minutes to get down to what we like to see, a bitters style bottle. I have no idea if there's any more of it. If it's whole, busted, whatever. No embossing facing me. But I just figured out what that weird R one was. Well, I kind of figured it out, not all the way. Hoffhe something Brothers. I don't know what that one is. I'm going to have to look it up. And then it looks like on the other panel, ART bitters. Heart bitters? First thought it was cathartic. But I don't think there's enough space between. Maybe there is. Who knows? Anyway, I gotta dig this bad boy out right now. So, if I uncover what looks like a whole bottle in the bank, I will resume filming as I pull it out. And if it's broken, you're not going to see any more filming. You'll just see tears running down the lens. Well, as promised, I was going to come back if it looked like it was whole. Embossing's down here on the bottom, so it's likely a Hofstadter's, not one of these Brothers things. The only thing that I can't tell is if it still has its neck or not. And it does. Oh, looky here. And it's full of juice. Full of snooze juice. Oh, but it's not an old style one. It's a newer one. Boo-hoo. And we got something. Illinois Glass Company on the bottom. So that can't be any older than 1870s, but it looks 1890s like most of the stuff. But hey, it's whole. It's mine. Unless somebody comes along and says otherwise. And they'll have to Indian wrestle me for it. Deep Indian wrestle, never lose. Okay, well, these bottles are the I was going to say the best ones to come out of the River Road dig, but they're actually almost the only ones that came out. Everything was crushed, and so were my feelings. I dug up broken Hofheimer Brothers Bavarian bitters from St. Louis, which is in Johnny's book, is valued at about $300. That would have been a sweet addition. Also, those London Royal Imperial Gin bottles have been haunting me. I've dug 3 broken ones now. And the one that I dug up at this location was pretty much all there. It was just under a couple of big rocks. So that's what happened there. This is the Illinois Glass Company bitters that came out in the video. Sadly, it's just a plain Jane Hofstadter's. Nothing great about it, other than it does have the Illinois Glass Company base mark on it. And that's a rather later Illinois Glass Company mark. So no big whoop there, except it was in perfect condition. Go figure that one. This little medicine here, I think I've only dug 2 of these, and these are really tough. Not so much for the company. Ray and Shoemaker were partners right up until early 80s, I think. Mostly through the 70s. But the bottles with this circular fancy monogram there for Shoemaker and for Ray and Shoemaker, I've only found 2 of these. Never even dug up any broken ones. Yeah, a sweet little bottle. Oddly enough, the other one that I dug up is the exact same size. So I don't know if they were even made in different sizes or what. I'd be surprised if not. But the real surprise was this bad boy, and he really didn't even come out of exactly where all these other bottles were. I showed up a few days later, and they had gone in and kind of cleaned up the lot and dug it out a bit. Had a big pile of dirt, and this was sticking out of the dirt pile. And when I walked up, I just saw the neck sticking out about like that, and I went, yeah, that's not going to be whole. And I pulled on it. Sure as heck, not only was it whole, but it was only the second one that I had dug up. I found one before in a stone line privy earlier. I dug up 3. 2 were broken, and one had a good sliver out of the lip, which oddly enough ended up disappearing from my table at a bottle show. I guess somebody decided it wasn't worth the price I had on it, but worth sticking it in their pocket and walking off with it. Partly because this is an unknown, unlisted guy, a local J.C. Carver King of Pain from Hannibal Mow. And the only thing I can find in the directories with Carver was that there was a Carver listed as a policeman. Which, you know, who knows, could have been concocting this in his barn, ordering bottles from the Woodall Tatum Company, apparently, according to the base. So anyway, that was really the main reason for even adding this to my video collection, is because of that King of Pain bottle. The other 2 are interesting, more so in a local sense. But the J.C. Carver's King of Pain almost looks like it was created for national distribution, but, you know, clearly it didn't get that far. And the context of the other 3 that I dug up was mid-1880s, I would say. So there you have it. Still searching for that blue London Royal Imperial Gin bottle. Yeah, kind of feeling there's a hole with a half a dozen of them in it. Just waiting for me somewhere. Yep. Okay, just as an addendum to an earlier dig video, the Brown's Aromatic Bitters hole, coughed up a couple of goodies that I kept. This cobalt blue, I got a nice little selection of colored cone inks, and this Carter's is no exception. It's not only is it beautiful, but it's got some nice iridescence in the glass, you know, a little bit, probably 80s, and I'll get back to that in a minute because that's significant. This one, if I can hold it correctly, it's just a plain Jane flask, but it's flint glass, I'm pretty sure, which you don't see a lot of, and it's by the T.A. Evans Company and Company. out of Pittsburgh, PA, and a little bit of research, well, actually a lot, because it wasn't really easy to find any info on. But this bad boy is a solid 1860s bottle. T.A. Evans was the founder of the Mastodon Glassworks in Pittsburgh in 1855, and then by 1860 he changed the name to T.A. Evans and Company. And then in 1869, William McCully of Pittsburgh bought it out. So that flask kind of lands squarely in the 1860s. And as an added note, I recently have been fascinated by a local lore, a story about a woman in Hannibal who is often visited by a dandy, you know, a guy with a bowler hat and well-dressed and always went out to the best places to eat, blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out, according to local legend, and I've been able to back it up with some listings in the local business directories, that the lady that was being visited was none other than the widow of the infamous Black Bart, highway bandit of Wells Fargo fame in Northern California. The one who got tracked down by leaving his hanky behind with a mark on it that led to his arrest. Anyway, it's an interesting story. I'm trying to track it down, and it turns out that when Black Bart's widow shows up in the directory in Hannibal in 1881 for the first time, she's listed as living here at this place where these bottles were dug up. How cool is that? So she could have actually possibly wrote to him while he was in prison. No, by then she was living in a different house, but in the early 1880s he was still out running around till he got busted in 83. And they were exchanging letters, it appears. And she could have actually dipped her pen and wrote him a letter from this very ink bottle. Is that cool or what? That's what I was thinking, so I thought I would just add that to my little bitters story, and just kind of maybe have a more interesting story later on, like dug up a pot behind her last house filled with gold coins, all San Francisco Mint. Now that would be interesting. Yeah.